Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group. I feel like it's more of a bulwark or a remnant, but it is what it is. We're a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy. And boy, howdy, we got some stuff broken in our democracy, but also how can we work together to fix it? That's my opinion, by the way. I don't know if I'm not speaking on the part of the entire Democracy Group. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are putting whole episodes up there now with videos, so that's kind of cool. You could get to look at my ugly mug, but more importantly and more pleasantly, you get to see some of the guests that that I'm having conversations with. We have links in the show notes to make it easy to find the YouTube channel, Patreon. Follow us, review us, all that good stuff. It all helps so we can continue having important conversations like the one I will be thinking through today and probably for the next few years. And that is, what the hell happened? What the hell happened? What the hell happened is I got everything wrong. I was especially wrong about what I thought a vast majority of us valued. But my key to better understanding all this is by thinking about actual people in my life that ended up making a different set of choices than I did. So got it all wrong, different set of values, but let me start thinking about individual people as opposed to generalities. So that's what I'm going to be going through today. So starting with how I got everything wrong. I got it all wrong. My read on how the election was going, my read on how the electorate was feeling, who was coming out to vote, who was motivated, who wasn't motivated, how things were breaking toward the end, what ultimately motivated people to vote one way or the other. I got certain states wrong, even states I know pretty well personally, or thought I knew pretty well. States I spent a lot of time studying, like the kinds of voters that made up the population, past voting trends, all kinds of polling data, as regular listeners of this program know. And by the way, I'm still not saying that the polls were wrong. The polls were right. At least good polls were right. And I've defined them before. I'm sure that, the Trafalgars of the world would be taking a freaking victory lap. And it disgusts me to think about that. Nonetheless, New York Times Siena was right. A lot of the polls were right. I was wrong in how I was reading it. The polls were right. So that part I got right. It's just the information I was gleaning from the polls that I got wrong, how I was looking at them, what information I was weighing into conclusions I was making, and what information I discounted. In particular, I really thought there were what I was calling fundamentals that weren't showing up in the technical information, in the numbers, or qualitative information that quantitative data wasn't reflecting, including factors like fundraising, volunteer signups, ground game, and overall enthusiasm. So I got all of that wrong. But here's the other thing that I got wrong, and this is a much more troublesome factor to me. I thought that a vast majority of us agreed on certain basic values. A good friend of mine put it to me this way. He said he felt betrayed. And that's a lot of what I'm feeling when I think in generalities. I resonate with that sentiment because I thought that virtues like honesty and basic decency really mattered. And don't give me the bullshit of, oh, they're all corrupt, or what about Hunter's laptop, or any of these. I'm still seeing these disgusting tropes about how Kamala got to where she got, and references to her using disparaging names. So so much of that is just, like I said, it's disgusting. It's a reflection of what's making things worse, of what's making it harder for any number of folks to see each other and hear each other across our differences. I also assumed wrongly that living peaceably in a pluralistic society is something we all wanted, or at least that we all wanted to strive for. But damn, was I wrong about that? I was also wrong to think about, to think about January 6th. That someone trying to violently overthrow an election is something we could all agree is not a good thing. That's a really big deal. that we should do everything in our power to never let that happen again. But that one, I will say, I got a decent sense that a whole different narrative was emerging on that very day. I did just I just didn't think that a majority of voters would basically either, you know, memory hole it, forget about it, or just completely sweep it under the rug. So that was that one. Um, that's perhaps most disappointing. That the propaganda worked, and at the end of the day, our democracy just isn't as high of a priority. This democratic republic, our constitutional order, just doesn't register as high of a priority as, say, I don't know, the price of a Big Mac or a gallon of gas. Um, and even that's up for debate. Like, I anyway, I won't get into the compare contrast and picking a particular day in 2020 when nobody was driving and laws of supply and demand depressed the prices of let's not go off the tracks here. Some people just felt that their lives were more expensive, that the price of eggs was more expensive. So I'm not going to sit here and disparage people for feeling that way. I'm not going to get into micro and macro economics. If you feel it, you feel it, and I know people very close to me who feel it. So I don't want to be judgmental in doing that because again, I was wrong about all of this. Anyway, there are some things I am going to try to understand better. We'll talk about some people I know who voted differently than I did, but I'm going to tell you right now, I do have my limits. There are some people who come in goodwill and good faith that for whatever reason arrived at different conclusions than I did. Those are the people that I want to spend time trying to understand. Then there are others, and I guess we'll talk about specific examples. I'm just going to have sharper elbows with. So yeah, I know this is talking politics and religion without killing each other, but it doesn't mean there aren't any arguments, vigorous arguments. It doesn't mean we're going to assume everyone's coming in goodwill because they're not. I'm going to try and focus more on the people that are my neighbors, friends, and family, people that do come in good faith because I want to understand why. I want to understand what I missed. And don't get me wrong, I will never vote for Donald Trump. I will never vote for a Trumpian or Trump wannabe candidate. That's not what this exercise is about. It's more about the fact that a lot of us are left reeling. So many of us have just been knocked on our asses and are beyond confounded that this country, the country I thought I knew, that a vast majority of my neighbors and countrymen voted, for an individual who tried in any number of ways to overturn an election, who refused to participate in the peaceful transfer of power, who was found to be liable of sexual assault, who's lied and cheated his entire way through his life and career, and it's only gotten worse as he's gotten older and more feeble and mentally declined, to use a phrase from a few months ago that seemed to matter to a lot of people that just clearly doesn't matter now. We don't need to, I just, we don't need to do that. We don't need to go over his record and rehash this debate. We can literally just look at his words and actions on any given day. And since I was raised as in an observant Jewish family and I'm now a Christian, I look to the Bible for what's right and wrong so we can compare what he says and does on any given day to what the Bible says is good and evil on just about any page of scripture. So as I've had to point out before, I don't start with some bias and then interpret what Trump says through my bias. Trump's actions and what he says and his character are made perfectly clear every single day. So I don't want to make any bones about that. I will never vote for Donald Trump. I will never vote for somebody who speaks and acts like Donald Trump. He's the anti virtue person that is such a dominant figure in our culture. Over now, it's going to be another freaking 4 years. But if you'll forgive my digression, this is relevant to this conversation because it's one of the things I got completely wrong. It's one of the things that's been hardest for me to reckon with in my conversations with friends and family and work colleagues who ended up supporting this individual. And yet they did. What I got wrong, the part that's most disturbing, is that there are some basic principles, some basic values, like an order of priorities that I just thought most of us agreed upon. But I was wrong. For any number of reasons, some priorities and some concerns became the primary driver of how a majority of people voted in the 2024 election. And as hard as this is, it's important to understand who some of these folks are. As much as many of us are inclined to judge the whole lot, to just sweep an entire majority of the electorate aside. Listen, I hold nothing back when it comes to Donald Trump himself, but I am not ready to shut every last one of my neighbors and family members out of my life who ended up voting for this piece of crap. You know, like I said, I hold nothing back in terms of how I feel about this anti-moral individual. Um, but the people who, for one reason or another, it's it's my job to understand them better and what drove their decisions. Um, because because at the end of the day, it's 74 million Americans who voted that way. And not all of them are evil. Not all of them are my enemy. We work alongside individuals. We're going to have Thanksgiving dinner with family members. We're getting coffee from people, or we're in line with people. Some are our next door neighbors. Whether you want to hear it right now or not, they're not all bad. As deeply as I hold certain moral convictions, scripturally based, biblically based, and real conservative, philosophically based convictions, not Trumpian conservative, real conservatism based convictions that opposes this creature who is now the president elect. The fact is, not every single person of those 74 million plus voters are bad people. So, part of what I'm going to try to do is to share stories and profiles of people I know who either enthusiastically supported Trump or at the very least would not vote affirmatively for Kamala Harris. I just started jotting down some names. I'm not going to name names, but I'll tell you the profiles. It includes a 20-nothing-year-old kid who's just voting in a presidential for the first time. It includes a young person in their early 20s who didn't vote for Trump but voted third party. It includes a young lady who's in her late 20s who's a small business owner. It includes this young couple in their mid 30s, great family, wonderful people. The husband's former military. The wife is a PhD in chemistry or biology or something like that. Really erudite, wonderful people. Another lady who is a hairdresser in her early 40s, I think. A friend of mine who's second or third generation Latino, who's in his late 40s. A woman that is a dear friend that I graduated high school with. Um, uh, there's a guy who's been in his late 50s or maybe early 60s who's been really good to one of my kids. He's a small business owner. There's a financial planner. There's a dentist. If the financial planner is probably early 60s, there's a dentist who's late 60s or maybe 70, who comes from the Middle East. There's also a couple other people I'll mix in there that I don't have as nice things to say about, but we do need to mention how some people are, for lack of a better word, showing their ass. So as much as I'm going to, well, let me just dive into it. I picked a couple just to get into right now. Um, this kid in his early 20s who voted in a presidential for the first time. I'm not sure that he voted for Trump for sure. He sure as hell didn't vote for Kamala. I'll tell you that much. Um, this is a kid who's good young man. Uh, wakes up at 5 a.m. every day, clocks in at work, works hard every day, just getting started on his career. Really hard worker, honest guy, accountable guy. Uh, he's someone that his parents would be proud of, in terms of what he's doing at this early stage of his young adult life. But for a kid like that, his world is basically like, all right, so I'm paying for gas now. I'm paying for my own food. It's kind of what I was saying before about Big Macs. When he's first buying his own Big Macs, when he started driving when he was 16, he's paying whatever, $4. Now he knows it's $5 for his Big Mac. He has friends around him that are, sending him the memes about the gas, and he buys it. Whether, like I said, it's questionable, the compare and contrast about the gallon of gas, but to him, he's filling up his car for 75, 80, $85. But in his memory, whether it's real or not, when he was first driving the car, I don't know, maybe his parents were paying for it, but he thinks that gas is a lot more expensive now. So to him, that's his whole world. That's what drove his decision. And he blames that on Kamala. there's no way that he was going to vote for, the vice president of this administration, where his impression was this administration made things worse for him. He was voting from his self-interest, just as we all do. Um, just as Madison pointed out in the Federalist Papers, that we have to balance out our self-interests. Um, you know, anyway, not to get off the rails on the Federalist Papers. Maybe that's a whole other podcast, let alone another episode. I'll talk about the lady in her early 40s who is a small business owner. In my conversation, nice lady. I don't know her too well, but we've had a number of different conversations. Um, and owns her own business. She's doing her best to make it. She does see that there are certain things that make it harder for a person to run a business in certain states versus others. She thinks that can be extrapolated to national politics. But the one thing she did mention to me was like, look, I feel like we're spending all this. This is what she said to me. I don't necessarily agree with her assessment of it. She said, look, I feel like we're spending all this money overseas, helping Ukraine, helping Israel. Meanwhile, what about us here at home? She was feeling some of the same things as the kid in his early 20s was feeling. Like, it's harder for me to go, grocery shopping every week. It's more expensive for me. And, it's not like she's making a ton more money. So she looks at conflicts around the world. And again, she bought into these memes. Oh, there is peace around the world, peace and prosperity, right? So that messaging on the part of Trump's campaign, despite what Trump was doing, his shenanigans he was pulling, his campaign was hammering home the peace and prosperity message. There was no wars around the world, regardless of whether it's true or not. Forgetting about Syria, forgetting about what was happening in African countries, forgetting about what was actually. But the message worked. The message worked. Everybody knows, not everybody, but a lot of people know that America has a stake in what's happening in Ukraine. Getting too deep into the details, all folks, like most folks, don't. At least in this person's assessment, she didn't get too deep into the details, other than to say, why are we spending all this money overseas when we have problems here at home? So that's why she didn't tell me she was voting for Trump, but I got the very distinct impression that that's the direction she was going. Somebody else will talk about um, the fella in his late 40s, early 50s, Latino guy, second or third generation. He's developed this just aversion for liberals, for the left, because he's tired of being told how he should think, because his mom or grandma came from wherever, Puerto Rico in his case, that he should think a certain way, and that's it. Forgetting about his own story, forgetting about what his challenges are, forgetting about what his actual priorities are. He's so fed up by, what he'll refer to as the woke agenda, or, these other things that are like others around him, liberals, or people on the left, people that are interacting with him, whether it's online or other people that he encounters in his life, that are making him, basically guilting him into, oh, well, you should think this way and you should vote that way and you're a bad person. And he just, at a certain point, he just hit the red line and he's like, to hell with all of yous. To hell with all of you. Don't tell me how I should vote because where my grandmother came from. There's more to my story and my life and what I need and um, what I expect from the people who represent us at the local, state, and national level. So don't tell me how I should vote because of where my grandmother came from. And he just got so fed up. There's no way he's ever going to vote, at least not in this climate, not in any time in the near future, that he's ever going to vote for somebody with a D before their name. But these are people. I'm bringing up these people and their stories because I want to put a human story behind the stats. I want to get away from just generalizing. I want to get away from them. I want to get away from labeling, oh, these are the same people who. We need to get away from that. We need to think about individual human beings in our families, our friends, our work colleagues, our associates, people that are in our neighborhood, and put a human faith and understand that this one vote, as much as I disagree with it, as much as it, and you can hear it in my voice, as much as it as much as it goes against the grain of some of my most foundational moral convictions, these are people that I can't assume are bad people. They're human beings with a story and a background and reasoning behind how they checked this one box on their ballot. So I ain't giving up on them. And I think it's important for us to get to know these individuals who arrive at different conclusions than we do as strongly as we feel about it. At the same time, I'll bring somebody else up. The father of kids that my kids went to school with when they were in a Christian school, he's a fucking fraud. I'll just fucking say it. And I'm sorry to start cursing right now, but there's some people, like I said before, I have a lot less freaking patience for. This guy puts on a freaking costume every day, basically, and it's the look on his face and the way and his demeanor. Oh, I'm so nice and I'm such a good family man and I'm this and I'm that, but the way he interacts is 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 dishonest. It's fraudulent. You know, again, I won't say his name, but this is a guy who had one career, failed at that career. I won't judge him for look, everybody goes through bumps in the road. Professional, a lot of people do professionally. Chose another career. I guess he's doing his best there. What pisses me off about this guy is that he pretends to be, a Christian, but every time that I say, look, man, I'm not going to argue with you. Let's just go to scripture. Let's talk about it. Now he has nothing to say. And the way he argues is it's not really an argument or what he posts on his thing. It's kind of like that a few months ago, the stock market, which has been doing great for the last 4 years, objectively. This is not a debatable fact. It's been hitting record highs. Well, one day, I think it was August or maybe early September, it had a downtick, like a 1 point downtick or something like that. Oh, this guy's posting, oh, the market's falling off a cliff. And then by the very next day or 2 days later, the market was back off to the races. You know who wasn't talking about the market since then? This guy. This guy. He posted one day, and the day that it ticked down by 1 point, which is what markets do, they don't just go straight line up. They go up and down and up and down, but over time they gradually, go up. So he posted one day that it has one downtick. And don't you know, the day after Trump was elected, the market had a decent day. Oh, the markets are off to the races. Like to him, Trump is magic. You know. So I have no patience for guys like this. I have no patience. The other thing that pisses me off about this guy is that talk about them. Talk about them. Every other post is they are trying to do this. They are, and I'm like, dude, who's they? Who do you mean by they? They tried to remove him from office. They tried to kill him. They tried to do this. They. So everybody who doesn't vote exactly like him, who doesn't have his particular orthodoxy or worship at his particular idol that he's chosen, is a them. Is that me? Is that me? Because I happen to vote for one person with a D before their name. Is that me? I tried to kill the freaking president, the ex-president. Is that me? So don't pretend to be some freaking nice Christian guy and I'm, quite soft spoken. You're full of shit, dude. You're full of shit. So yeah, like I said, I have plenty of people, a dozen different people. I jotted down their names that I could go through that I am with them. They're family members or dear friends that I identify with them and would I don't know I would choose to spend my life with a lot of these people, like the kid in his early 20s, like this young lady this lady in her early 40s who is a small business owner. This other fella in his late 40s, early 50s, who's a second or third generation Latino guy. Like these are a lot of people that I love. I genuinely love, but want to understand them. But then there's these other guys that are freaking frauds. So, like I said, it's a mixed bag. But I don't want to assign this level of aversion to every single one of them because there's a lot more people that I want to have an affinity for and have relationships with who happen to check this one box differently than in my core I disagreed with. So, like I said, that's just a few of the people I know personally. I'll be mentioning any number of others in the coming weeks, months, and years. Because as much as you might be yelling at your phone or your computer or wherever you're listening to or watching this and saying, how can they think that? The fact is many millions of people do think differently than I do and you do. As much as many of us have this myopic tendency, even in terms of in the terms I was trying to explain before, like basic agreements on shared values and common decency, there are any number of factors that shape the opinions and the mindset of the people we know, and in many cases, the people we love. And you could shout out, say the hairdresser in her late 30s, early 40s, and try to get through to her that she's voting to take away her own rights and bodily autonomy as a woman. You know, you know, but many people I know believe that life starts at conception. That's just one issue. We weren't even talking about that. But the where life begins for many people, that's an unshakable belief. So that might be your issue, and women's health and the freedom to make your own choice, that might be an unshakable belief for you. Just as for some people, when life begins is an unshakable belief for them. And again, we could talk about the issue. We could talk about the fact that abortions went up for the first time in 40 years under the first Trump term. He didn't make the thing better. And he's flip-flopped, by the way, more times on this issue, just like he has on any number of other core issues. We can argue about the issue or the candidates until we're blue in the face. But my friend, the hairdresser, will absolutely positively not be persuaded by somebody shouting at her, "You voted against your own best interest. How can you do that? How can you think that?" And she sure as hell won't be persuaded by someone shouting about her that she never even talks to, like so many of us do, by keeping ourselves in our own little bubbles and only talking to people who just don't disagree with us. That's not productive. So I know I got worked up this time around. I don't know if any of this helps. For me, it does. Part of it is just working out my thoughts. You can tell. I'm sure that I'm a little bit more worked up than usual. But part of the process for me is to acknowledge that I got some things wrong, a lot of things wrong, actually. And I also have to go through the process of lamenting the fact that a certain basic set of values that I thought most of us shared really isn't shared at this point by everyone, or even a majority of people. But then to keep striving to understand my friends and relatives who are part of the majority of voters who voted the way they did, differently than I did, because I just want to understand things better. Again, I got a lot wrong. The things that I got wrong that I'm most upset about is that the shared values thing. But then the process of moving forward, for me at least, is understanding the individuals, not the general, 74 million people kind of generally, but specifically. I just want to understand individuals better. And I resist certain conclusions that only cause me to be more cynical about people in general, or at least the majority of voters in this election, to just write off half the population as bad people or evil, and to hold that level of malice. Because number one, it's not helping. And two, it's just not true. So while there are some complete assholes, like the guy I was describing toward the end of this talk, there's some complete assholes in the bunch. And believe me, I'll point them out just like I did today. Not every single person who either voted for Trump or just didn't vote for Kamala is bad. And I just want to understand better what I clearly missed this time around. So as always, if you dig what we're doing here, if you could put up with my with my going off the rails a little bit today, remember to follow this show, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Write the review. We still need reviews on Apple in particular. And now you can watch the conversations on YouTube. Support us on Patreon. It's youtube.com/@politicsandreligion. Patreon is similar. It's patreon.com/politicsandreligion. Check them all out. Subscribe, get some TPNR swag. Your support really does make a difference. So thank you for all of it. Now go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect. And have, sorry, I wasn't very gentle today at times, right? Anyway, have a great week nonetheless.